Hello and welcome to Access Asia. I'm Solange Mougin. Coming up, Pakistan faces a constitutional crisis with its Prime Minister Imran Khan in the eye of the storm. And in Sri Lanka, days of angry protests have led to a state of emergency and calls for the president to resign. Finally, we take you to Malaysia. Badminton has long been a popular sport in the country, but now a glow-in-the-dark version is making fans' eyes light up. But first to Pakistan. The nation is currently in the midst of a political upheaval, with Imran Khan fighting for his political life. He was faced with a vote of no confidence on Sunday, and it was expected to remove him from power. But before the vote could happen, it was thrown out by the deputy speaker. Then the National Assembly was dissolved. Khan maintains that the push to oust him is a foreign conspiracy, and he has repeatedly alleged that there's a threat letter from the United States.
No foreign power or corrupt politicians should decide the future of this country. A conspiracy to topple the elected government of 220 million people has failed today.
To find out more about the constitutional crisis, we're joined by Dr. Farzana Sheikh, an associate fellow at Chatham House. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Sheikh. When Imran Khan was a cricket player before turning to politics, he said his team would fight like cornered tigers. As Prime Minister, he seems to be doing exactly the same thing to hold on to his job. How did he end up in this precarious position?
Well, you're absolutely right to think that he is desperate to hold on to his job. But of course, at the moment, it's a very tricky stage or place to be in for him. How did he get here? Well, basically, there were two factors. One, I think, has to do with the fact that there was really mounting public discontent over the government's mismanagement of the economy in particular, but also broader questions of misgovernance and rumors of corruption as well. But I think far more important than any of these issues was, of course, the growing distance between Prime Minister Imran Khan and his government and the military establishment, which was widely seen to have acted as the government's sponsor and indeed made it possible for him to take over as head of government in 2018 following a general election.
So Khan has lost the support of the majority of parliament, but what kind of popularity does he hold among the people?
Well, he's still very popular, and I think that's what he is banking on. I mean, even if Imran Khan is made to go, let's assume that, for one reason or another, the court finds him to have violated or to have been in violation of the Constitution. His brand of politics, I believe, could well outlive his actual place as Prime Minister, only because his brand of politics represents precisely the kind of conservative, pro-Islamist stance that vast swathes of Pakistan, particularly amongst its urban middle classes, subscribe to.
You mentioned the military earlier, and Pakistan has long been ruled by the military, and it still plays a prominent role in politics. In this political crisis, what role does the military have?
Well, I think, there is, of course, continuous speculation about, backroom maneuverings by the military and, claims that it continues to interfere in the political process. Much of this cannot really be substantiated for obvious reasons. I mean, the military establishment in Pakistan isn't exactly the most transparent organization. But I think for the time being, there are few people who would want to place a bet on any kind of formal military intervention, only because of the parlous state of Pakistan's economy, which would mean that were the military to take over, the IMF, on which Pakistan is at the moment dependent, would immediately cut off aid and refuse to assist Pakistan.
Now, what does this political upheaval and Khan's particular nationalist populism politics mean for Pakistan's relationship with the international community, with countries like the United States, for example?
Well, I mean, this has come to the fore in a very prominent way because, in fact, according to Imran Khan, his party and his followers, the vote of no confidence, which is at the moment causing him such great difficulty and has put the country in this state of constitutional crisis, is said to have been orchestrated by the United States. Imran Khan believes that the United States, particularly the Biden administration, has been working to effect what he calls regime change in Pakistan, and has roundly criticized the opposition and claimed that it has been working with foreign powers, by which it is widely understood he means the United States, working with foreign powers to bring about a change in government that would be more palatable to the United States.
That's all we have time for. Thank you for speaking with us, Dr. Sheikh. Now, political upheaval is also shaking Sri Lanka. This week, its president offered to share power with the opposition. This comes after days of protests and calls for Gotabaya Rajapaksa and his family to step down. Anger has flared up in the country over the government's handling of its worst economic crisis in decades. And over the weekend, a state of emergency and a 36-hour curfew were declared. James Mulholland has more.
Go Home Gota calls for President Gotabaya Rajapaksa to resign grow louder despite a nationwide weekend curfew and an offer to share power with the opposition. Thousands have come out onto Sri Lanka's streets since last week, angry over unprecedented food and fuel shortages. They say the government has mismanaged an economic crisis thought to be the worst since independence in 1948.
This government, we do not want them anymore. We are stripped off of our basic rights, our right to fuel, our right to energy. We don't have power for almost 16 hours a day now.
Fuel problem is the main one. Yeah. No diesel, no petrol. Then there's no gas. There's no milk powder.
Police used tear gas and water cannon to break up a rally in the city of Paradena last Sunday. These scenes have been repeated for days since hundreds of people marched on the president's home, prompting him to declare a state of emergency. But neither this nor the curfew have had the desired effect.
The government cannot stop tens of thousands of people joining this struggle. It's a joke if the government thinks it can stop us with barriers or tear gas.
Rajapaksa has played the compromise card with an offer to share power with the opposition. The whole cabinet stood down, leaving only the president and his brother, Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa. 3 other members of the powerful family were among those to quit, including 2 other brothers and the premier's son, Namal Rajapaksa. But many protesters say it's not enough and insist that the entire family must leave power.
Now to Hong Kong, where its leader Carrie Lam has announced that she will not be seeking a second term as the territory's chief executive. In office since 2017, Lam oversaw an erosion of civil liberties in Hong Kong and was widely criticized for it. Her 42-year career in government and a 5-year term as chief executive come to an end June 30th. As for Lam's successor, the territory's second highest officer, Chief Secretary John Lee, is tipped as the favorite to be selected in May by a committee of largely pro-Beijing loyalists. Across Asia, countries are lifting coronavirus restrictions. In Indonesia, thousands were able to gather to celebrate the start of Ramadan. And after 2 years of border closures, fully vaccinated visitors will now no longer need to quarantine. Now to the land border between Malaysia and Singapore. It has also fully reopened for the first time in 2 years. One of the world's busiest land crossings, at least 400,000 people are expected to cross within the first week of reopening. And in Thailand, PCR tests are no longer required for those traveling to the country. But one exception to such easing restrictions is Shanghai. Practically all of its residents have been confined to their homes. The military and thousands of doctors have been deployed to test the city's 26 million residents. Finally, to Malaysia, One of the gimmicks to entice people out of their homes as COVID cases ease is what's called the shuttle in the dark badminton. It's the same as normal badminton, except the court, clothes, and equipment glow in the dark. Nicholas Rushworth has more.
It is badminton with a difference. There are neon lights and a glowing shuttlecock bouncing back and forth. It looks like science fiction, but it's actually a shuttle-in-the-dark badminton hall in the Petronas Twin Towers in Kuala Lumpur. Hitting the shuttlecock this way is more of a challenge.
Range in the shuttle in the dark, it's completely dark, of course, but with the lightning, somehow we are still able to hit it. It requires better focus. It's exciting, yeah, it's different, but it's still playing like normal.
Shuttle in the Dark is the brainchild of a sports management company which was looking at how to encourage more people to come back to or take up the sport after 2 years of social restrictions due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Our initial goal was how can we encourage and gain back the interest of people to come back and play. And not only those enthusiasts, but then as well the new people who was not able to or never play badminton before.
It's not cheap. Shuttle in the Dark charges nearly €40 an hour to play. That is too much for some.
If you compare the price of playing at the regular court with the glow-in-the-dark version, of course, then I would say it is too expensive. Most regular players have a low income, and their reasons for playing badminton are not to be competitive.
Badminton is one of the main sports in Malaysia. The country has some of the world's top-ranked players. The futuristic version could take off, adding an extra dimension to the sport.
That does it for this edition of Access Asia. Thank you for being with us. And stay tuned for more world news here on France 24.